This is the I Read Star Wars comic books special. I'm your host, Kara Szamborski, here with Brian Murray, co-host.
Hello.
And
how's it going?
Well, you know, everything is Star Wars because we are living in the time of The Mandalorian and a new Star Wars movie and all these Star Wars comics. And today we are going to focus on one comic in particular, Best Boy Kanan, which should be its full title, really.
Yeah, just sweet dummy Kanan Jarrus.
So for those of you listening who are not familiar with Kanan as a character, I say to you, please go watch Star Wars Rebels, which is now streaming in its entirety on Disney+. The thing which is consuming my life and the life of many other millennials at this moment in time. It's
true. I've watched like 7 episodes of Kim Possible this week.
I watched Sweet Life of Zack and Cody because I could. The Aristocats because I could. I don't think the novelty will wear off for a while. It'll take me through to like well into the new year of me just being like, so on Disney Plus last night I saw this thing. Right. So Rebels. So we are introduced to this character Kanan Jarrus on Rebels, and Kanan is not quite a Jedi, and we find out
Jedi-ish.
Yeah, we find out slowly over the course of the show. Full spoilers for Star Wars Rebels, the Kanan comics, and the Star Wars novel A New Dawn, by the way, for everyone listening at home. Because actually all of these things, A New Dawn and Rebels, are referenced in the Kanan comic, to the point where I'm not quite sure if you're reading the comic as someone unfamiliar with these other properties, if you're going to get the full nuance of what's going on. Brian, would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think you're not going to fully understand like who the side characters are and what their relationships to Kanan are, but I do think that there is still an enjoyable story. So don't feel like you have to watch all seasons of Rebels in order to read the comic.
You're much kinder than I am. I'm like, but how will you know that he's sort of training this other kid as maybe a Padawan? So
the are they dating or not of Kanan and Hera.
Okay. So then super short primer on Kanan Jarrus. Kanan Jarrus, we slowly learn, was a Jedi Padawan, but did not complete his Jedi training. And so this comic looks at why that didn't happen, which I will sum it up for you right now. Order 66. So Kanan was a Padawan, and when Order 66 was executed, he escaped. So this comic kind of goes into what happened to him around that time. And I have feelings about this, Brian.
I bet.
So, we start a little bit before Order 66 is executed. We see Kanan's like a super eager Padawan, and he just wants to like get into training. And Master, do we know how to pronounce her name? Depa Billaba.
I always thought it was Depa Billaba. Master
Depa Billaba, whom we see super briefly seated at the Jedi Council in, I think, Star Wars Episode 1. She's the one with like the dots on her face. And
real blinking, you'll miss it.
So, as a child watching this movie and desperate for female representation in Star Wars, I was very just like, oh, I know her name and her name and her name, and I know nothing else about them. So for me, it's super exciting to read more about her in this comic. Specifically, the fact that she's somehow the only Jedi that we're shown ever having any kind of PTSD from the Clone Wars.
Yeah, it's kind of astonishing.
Right? Like, you would think that from all of these Jedi being taught to be at peace, and like their life is in the Republic era is pretty much like a constant meditation situation, to suddenly be thrust into commanding armies and watching people die around them. Like, I'm pretty sure being Force sensitive will trigger you a little bit more than not being Force sensitive in situations like this. So I'm surprised that Depa Billaba is the only Jedi Master we're seeing who has this reaction.
Yeah, I mean, she was also almost killed by General Grievous. If the story is presented in a very strange way, chronologically speaking, where the first 6 issues take place before and kind of after the second 6 issues.
Yeah.
Because the second 6 give us the story of how Kanan became Depa Biloba's Padawan and how they came to be on this planet Kalar, which is where 90% of the action in this book takes place.
Yeah. I didn't find the weird chronology difficult to grasp because I think I kind of viewed it cynically as like, they greenlit 6 issues, and then when people started buying them, they realized they could probably write more and still sell it.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct.
But I enjoyed watching the start of that Padawan Master relationship and was very sad when, spoilers, she died so that Kanan could escape. At this point, he was going by his quote-unquote real name of Caleb Doom. And
sounds weird to hear it out loud like that.
Yeah, it bothers me that his fake name is so close to his real name.
Yeah.
Like
Kanan, Caleb.
Like, wouldn't you stumble over that or like slip up really easily? Like, make it something completely different, you know? Like, I don't know. Like, does Zero the Hutt still need his name? Like, make your name like Zero, not Jedi. Like, that would be more subtle, I think. I don't know.
I'm deeply offended that you have reminded me of Zero the Hutt existing at all. That purple war crime.
He just came into my head unbidden. I'm like, why? We can use his name. He doesn't need it, right? Oh my god. Yeah. So this book kind of pulled at my heartstrings in that they kind of show like like, we're gonna call him Caleb or Kanan. I feel like Kanan is just easier to have the through line.
I'm gonna call him Kanan.
All right, so you see young Kanan like immediately before Order 66 is executed, just having a real chill time with the clone troopers, and they're bonding and they're all being buddies, and he's found a friend who saved his life, and it's like, it's just so sweet. And then you're like, I hate everything, because then that order comes through and the clone troopers are like, well, guess we're shooting these people we were just chilling with a few seconds ago.
Yeah, the clones got done dirty, and the 2 primary clones in this story are Commanders Gray and Styles, and they make me so sad. Yeah, and it's like no, go on. I was just gonna say they were such good friends with Depa and Kanan. Now I don't know what to call them.
Kanan, just go with Kanan.
Kanan and Depa and these clones were so close and like palling around at the campfire, and it wasn't just a military structure that they had. They were clearly personal friends. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of see they have that whole, a good soldier follows orders through line that I think that was the line from Clone Wars, where one of the clones gets Order 66 triggered early. And that might be too deep a cut. I don't know if anybody else remembers that. I
did not remember that, but when they were, like, we do see some soul searching on behalf of these clone troopers as this comic book series progressed, of one of them being like, why did we do that? And so that's kind of like Season 6 of Clone Wars, which only aired on Netflix, but I think it's on Disney Plus now. Season 6 of Clone Wars, like, kind of went out of their way to explain why these clones would all of a sudden turn on the Jedi that we've established, like, have had these personal friendships. And basically it comes down to, like, we genetically programmed them to have to follow this order.
Yeah, they have some kind of like biochip or something in their heads.
Yeah. Oh, no, we can't go down this path because I'm going to feel all kinds of ways about fives, and I don't want to go there right now. But yeah, so kind of seeing that sort of referenced in this comic, I was like, ooh, this is the deep cut comic. But then again, like, if you haven't consumed all this extra Star Wars media, are you really reading the Kanan comic?
I think that's a fair question. The only reason I think that that might have been the case was because I want to say that Kanan was one of the first Marvel Star Wars comics.
Yes. I think you're right, because I remember reading this. I think it was in the first 1 or 2 seasons of Rebels, because I remember reading this comic and being like, wait, are Hera and Kanan flirting? I remember that being my reaction while reading this, because they hadn't really kind of introduced that in the show. Is this comic before the release of A New Dawn? I don't think so, because they reference Admiral Sloane, right? Or Captain Sloane in here?
There's a note on there that says she mentions like what he did to her on Gorse, and there's a little editor's note to go check out the book. Okay,
so then it would have been like maybe the first 1 or 2 seasons of Rebels, A New Dawn, and then this comic, which kind of makes sense. But then maybe I read the comic before, or maybe this part of the second part of the comic was released. I don't know. I'm confusing myself, but I did reread A New Dawn semi-recently, and I was just kind of struck the second time reading it by how, like, I hesitate to use the word gross, but like how gross Kanan was being about Hera in that book.
Yeah. He was very lascivious, maybe? Is that the right word?
Yeah, because basically, like, so Star Wars Rebels is a kid's show, and that's where you're introduced to these characters. And the priority of a kid's show that's, let's be cynical and honest, is targeted towards young boys is not going to necessarily focus on romantic entanglements. So, but you like look at the characters and you're like, okay, like you're all hanging around, you're like a big family, that's mom, that's dad. And then you're like, oh, but do quote unquote mom and dad actually like each other? And then in A New Dawn, where you see how Hera and Kanan meet, they basically meet because Kanan looks at Hera and is like, okay, she's hot, I'm gonna follow her wherever she goes.
Yeah, it's questionable.
That's literally what happens, is he decides that she's attractive and he wants to bang her, so he's going to just like hang out with her. And then like I hate to be so crass about it, but that's literally what it is. He's just constantly thinking about how hot she is. And, yeah, so in this comic you see like a little bit of like maybe they're being flirty, but
he calls him love on more than one occasion.
Yeah, but then I was still like, no, I'm in denial until it happens in the show. It's not canon.
Right.
And then I think that next season of Rebels, she called him love, like over the comm or something. I was like, oh, you are together. I see it. But
the Ghost isn't the only ship taking flight today.
Oh, man. And then, like, again, full spoilers for Star Wars Rebels, but then at the end of Rebels, in that, like, flash forward episode, you see that they actually, like, had a kid. And I just have so many questions about the genetic composition of that kid, because I'm like, it's a human kid, but with green hair? Is that how that works with, like, human Twi'lek procreation? I just have questions.
Yeah, we're gonna need that follow-up series.
Like, Star Wars, you're like giving me concerns. All right, so back to the comic, I guess. So when we see young Kanan kind of escaping from Order 66, and he's basically on the run and has to figure things out. And we basically find out that the Jedi do not prepare Padawans for being separated from the like power structure that is imposed in Republic era Jedi.
Yeah, we don't know how long Kanan is on his own, but he's definitely scrounging for food in dumpsters like 3 pages after Order 66.
Plus, he basically latches on to the first miscreant who wasn't totally horrible to him, because he quote unquote
Janus.
Yeah. because he has quote unquote nowhere else to go. And you're just like, man, that's sad. Like, no one gave these kids survival training. So
yeah.
It's like, so that kind of in reflection of the Obi-Wan and Anakin series that we read earlier, like Obi-Wan is like totally cool with the idea that Anakin's on his own and being captured, because he's like, yeah, he's fine. So it's like, then is it up to the Jedi Masters individually to teach these Padawan survival skills? And Depa Billaba just never got around to that with Kanan? Or like, this feels like a major failing on the part of the Jedi Order to not prep kids for being separated from their adult guardians.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems like the kind of thing that would come up more than once, so you'd assume they'd have a plan for it. Right,
but instead Kanan's just like, you kind of helped me. Can I come off-world with you in your ship? And Janus is just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I had the mental image of, like, Kanan hanging off of Janus's arm while Janus, like, swings it around trying to get rid of him.
That's basically what happens in this book.
But, like, emotionally. And then, of course, Kanan winds up becoming Janus's sidekick /
ward
/ bait.
The Robin to his Batman.
Yeah. They at one point he uses the fact that Kanan is a Jedi to turn him over, only so that he can like finish the job and then later come back and break Kanan out.
It's just like, all right, man, as long as that's working. But again, did you give this kid any survival knowledge, or are you just letting him go?
Yeah. Actually, one thing I did want to point out is during that jailbreak scene, Casimir, Janus Casimir is his name, he busts through the wall with a giant droid, and that droid is actually like the concept art for IG-88.
Really?
Yeah, that weird like bulbous headed stocky droid thing.
It's a super deep cut. I did not pick up on that.
Yeah, I mean, I did. We've talked about my borderline obsession with the IG droids in the last episode.
It's serving you so well.
I know. I never expected it to really be relevant, but then we had IG-11 in The Mandalorian, and now this.
Like, yeah. Here you are. It's your time.
Your
time to shine.
Finally, everything is coming up Millhouse.
Oh my god. So I do want to point out, like, on a comic book level, in terms of storytelling, I see your point about the weird timelines within the framing devices that they're using to tell this story. But I do want to point out that I think the action sequences in this book are very clearly rendered.
Yeah.
Like, Star Wars books, for better or for worse, do try to capture the galactic scope of the conflicts that are happening, whether it's a space battle or a lightsaber battle or like a full-on...
Some kind of Star War.
Some kind of like a Star War. And in comics, it can get confusing to render so much action clearly on a page, but I feel like this comic is one of the better examples of clearly laid out action sequences in Star Wars comics.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Like, at no point was I confused about what was happening, whereas there have been some other books where I'm just like, wait, what just happened? Who just got shot? What?
I was just listening to our TIE Fighter episode in the car earlier today.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. For example, TIE Fighter.
Yeah. Yeah, I listen to my own podcasts. Don't
Brian,
don't
you
judge
nerd.
Me.
Oh man, I had another like Jedi question. Not so much just do they teach these kids how to survive if they're separated from their designated grown-up, but also there's a lot of kind of Jedi questioning their place in the universe, but I feel like the Jedi way is it's like such a way of life, and they know their purpose and their mission. Like, would would, like, what's my place in the universe be a question that they're constantly asking themselves? Like, I don't know. I feel like this is a very clear, like, you have force sensitivity and therefore you are a Jedi and that's your niche.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that Depa Billaba and by extension Kanan aren't very good Jedi. Like, I mean, like Depa was on the council, so obviously she was well respected, but she did not have the same rock solid relationship with the Jedi Order specifically that a lot of the other masters have.
Mace Windu.
And, exactly. And Kanan, we also see, is much more likely to question things than he is to just kind of roll with it. There's one really cute scene where he's talking to the Jedi archivist, and she just finished explaining something. He's like, yeah, but why? Like, I get that it's done that way. I'm not questioning that it's done that way, but how come it's done that way? Like,
so Jedi on a more questioning line.
Yeah. Yeah, not quite an agnostic Jedi, but close.
It kind of reminded me of, was it in Force Awakens or The Last Jedi where Rey is like, I just want someone to tell me what my place is in all of this? Like,
I don't remember. I think that's The Last Jedi, but I could be wrong.
And it's like, I get it on... I get that question coming from her because she's been bombarded with a lot of information in a very short period of time after having lived her entire life with the same daily routine on Jakku.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I guess I'm assuming that all Jedi had like kind of bought the party line. But I'm realizing now as I'm talking about it that I'm also listening to the audiobook Dooku Jedi Lost, and basically the entire like underlying current of that book is people kind of questioning why they're doing the things that they're doing. So I guess I shouldn't be so surprised, but I just felt like while reading this book that the Republic era Jedi are presented to us so firmly as being like really certain of what they're doing and really like entrenched in their ways. And that's part of what causes their downfall, that it was kind of surprising to see some questioning happening internally at that moment in time.
Yeah, the Jedi Order is presented as being very monolithic. And what we're seeing here are Jedi who don't quite align with that, but not to the extent of, you know, our favorite rebellious family of the Dooku, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin line.
My favorite line of trashy Jedi rebels.
If there was ever a Jedi in a leather jacket.
You're not wrong. It's better because Ewan McGregor probably has several leather jackets as he's a motorcycle aficionado.
Yeah. But Obi-Wan kept throwing his leather jackets onto the ground, so they had to make him stop wearing them. Just take the robes. The robes are cheaper to clean.
Maybe that's what's going to happen in the Obi-Wan series that got greenlit. Maybe he's just going to be like riding around Tatooine on the Star Wars version of a motorcycle.
Yeah,
I would watch that. I would watch that.
Cantina band cover of Bad to the Bone playing.
Oh man, Ewan McGregor, if you're listening, we approve this plan. Oh man.
So I was very glad that we did get to see a little bit of Rey Sloane at the end, because Rey Sloane is one of my favorite through lines from the Star Wars books.
She shows up in a lot, right?
Yeah,
because
she's a big figure in the Aftermath trilogy.
That's where I remembered her from. It's been so long since I've read those. Okay, so wait, so then her chronology is we would first see her in what? A New Dawn, and then in this, and then she's an admiral by the time we get up to Aftermath.
Yeah. So I think like we see her trajectory from captain all the way through vice admiral, and then I think she like has taken the title Grand Admiral by the end of the Aftermath series.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong because it has also been years since I read those, but
yep, Yeah, there was a lot going on post Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be expected to remember all of it.
I think that she as a character is rad as hell, and I love her relationship to Kanan. Like, she in the comic refers to him as her hobby. Like, he made her so mad when they first met that she spends her downtime hunting his ass across the galaxy.
Do we need to get her a new hobby? Is she okay?
Well, I mean, after the end of Rebels, we certainly do.
I set myself up for that one, didn't I?
Too soon for that.
Too soon. Oh, man. Oh, so, what did you think in this comic of, again, like the weird framing device aside, but the quote unquote contemporary storyline of the Rebels crew returning to Collar and us kind of seeing them interact a little bit?
I liked it. I mean, anytime that I can see more of my favorite space family, I'm thrilled to do so.
I'm such a good space family.
I love that we got a little bit of, like, anytime Chopper beeps something, somebody else is like, hey, stop being mean. I love that Chopper is just like a total asshole robot. I really liked a lot of the panel work they did in the second arc, so issues like 7 through 12 or whatever it turned out to be, where there's a period in time where Caleb is in a back-to-tank, and a lot of the time when we go from the quote-unquote present into the flashback, we get sort of a parallel framing of a shot of Kanan in the back-to-tank and then Lil Kanan back in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. Just kept showing you those parallels in his really, really full life.
Yeah.
Also, just like on a dramatic, over the top level, I appreciated that when he does in the present storyline emerge from the back to tank, they like go out of their way to show these like full or almost full page panels of just him being like almost naked with all his muscles and his lightsaber, just like, I'm here to fuck shit up and look good, and you're like, yes you are.
Yeah. There's a real like, okay, I see what Hera's into. She likes this ponytailed muscle boy, and I don't blame her.
And he like still had the goatee going on at this point in the comics. So I guess it's just later he changed up his hairstyle, and you're just like, oh honey.
Yeah, he looks like a real greasy boy.
Yeah, he does look kind of gross.
I definitely went to high school with kids who had the same aesthetic. Not the same abs, though.
I was going to say, would they have looked the same emerging from a back to tank in just their shorts?
No, much more of like a wet cat, you know?
Sure.
When you see a cat that's sort of like ragged and pissed.
I just, there's actually so much attention paid to semi-nude characters and back to tanks in this comic, and they all look like super like attractive and lithe, and it just makes me feel kind of bad for Mark Hamill in Return and Empire Strikes Back in his like floaty diaper situation.
Yeah, because Kanan, and we see Depa Billaba in a back to tank as well.
Yep.
Because before she takes on Kanan, she's basically recovering from a 6-month coma.
Yeah, casual.
But yeah, like she's got some kind of Jedi like wrap binder thing going on. Kanan just has his little black like tight shorts, and then yeah, poor Luke. That is his giant wet diaper thing.
Like, I don't think, like, oh, yeah, Luke Skywalker in the back to tank, like, sex symbol. But, like, looking at this comic, it's clear that the back to tank is an excuse for them to be like, look, Jedi are sexy, too.
Yeah, it definitely, like, we never thought of a back to tank as being a place you could be sexy. But now that we've seen that potential, we look back on the past with fresh eyes. I promise we did not come into this planning to talk about how sexy Kanan is. But here we are.
It's kind of inevitable. I mean, honestly, because he's up there with, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? The other kind of renegade Jedi dude. Quinlan Vos.
Quinlan Vos.
Yeah, it's like he and Quinlan Vos are the quote-unquote sexy Jedi who are, like, allowed to have sexual relations with people. So, yeah. I guess, like, once they realized they couldn't really do a lot with Quinlan Vos, they were like, Kanan's the sexy Jedi because he never became a Jedi, so he never did the celibacy thing. And, like, they kind of mention, again, like, getting into more novels and so forth. Dooku's first Padawan, Rael Averross, like, casually mentions several times that he fucks around because it's fine as long as you don't form attachments.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got Quinlan Vos, the sexy Jedi, who, like, I guess that's more of a Legends interpretation at this point, but, like, I read Dark Disciple.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what happens. If you don't, you need to read it. And
stop reading it like 80% of the way through.
Yeah. And then Kanan is like, well, he didn't fully become a Jedi, so he's allowed to form attachments. And then Rael Averross is just like, fucking is fine. Marriage is probably out of the question, though. And you're just like, oh, so now we're saying Jedi fuckboys can be a thing? Like, come on.
Especially if you've listened to the audiobooks like Kara and I did, because Rael Averross has the finest, like, deep country accent you've ever heard.
It's superb, but it, like, pulls me out of the story a little bit because I'm like, I'm sorry, am I listening to a Western or a Star Wars?
Yeah, where in Space, Texas is this guy from again?
And then that begs the further question, like, are the Outer Rim planets supposed to be, like, coded trailer park situations? And if so, why is everyone still speaking in, like, a neutral or British accent?
Yeah, it's like the good guys have Midwest standard and the bad guys are all British.
Oh man, this is not where I expected this conversation to go, but here we are, Jedi fuckboys.
We've gone far afield, but
so any final thoughts on the Kanan comic book, Brian?
The one thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot about was that this guy Janus Casimir, the name Janus comes from a Roman god who was represented by two faces, and Casimir is kind of two-faced. And he was also the god of beginnings and transitions. So I just thought that was a cool little, I don't know, symbolism, probably not the right word, but...
A nerd wrote this.
yeah, exactly. Or at least a nerd who watched season 2 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when they all became their costumes.
Oh my god. Fantastic. I guess my final thoughts are I loved Star Wars Rebels, so I was just really excited to see additional media being created about these characters. Like you said, best space family. And I hope that as we get further into the exciting new world of Disney Plus being able to churn out lots of additional content, that we will get a little more about what was happening to our best babies following Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, we know that Hera is still around, so give me more. I want more Hera.
I want them to find Ezra. I just want them to find Ezra so that Kanan didn't die in vain. Spoilers.
The best part, though, is that if they find Ezra, they also find Thrawn.
Yes, let's do this. Let's do
this, Disney. I really want
Disney.
the, like, Thrawn, Ezra, like, marooned on a stranded planet for 15 years, like, still hating each other but working together.
Let's do this, Disney Plus. You have the technology. All right. Thank you all for listening to the I Read Star Wars comic book podcast presented by I Read Comic Books. This show was first aired on the IRCB Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast. Special thanks to all you wonderful supporters out there.
You can send us feedback about this show at ircbpodcast@gmail.com and check out our website, IRCB Podcast, for our Discord, zines, and all things IRCB. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IRCB Podcast.
This show was produced by Brian Murray and Kara Szamborski, edited by Zander Riggs, with Mike Rapin as executive producer.
Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.